Hi guys.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi.
Welcome back to Brokenness Meets Grace. Forgive the gaps. Just get used to the gaps because we never know when we're actually going to have the time to actually record.
Yeah.
It's really, really hectic on our ends, but we do try. We want to try to keep it as consistent as possible.
We have to.
Yeah.
We don't have a choice.
Exactly. But we also try to make sure that we are spirit-led. I think a lot of times as people, we always want to do things in our own strength and force and push. But if the Spirit leads and we do have the opportunity to do so, we will. But if not, then we're okay with that.
Yeah.
And when the time is right, we will. And guess what? The time is right. So we're happy to be back. Welcome to our second episode of our third season of Brokenness Meets Grace.
Yep.
And we're breaking down the heroes of the Bible. We hope that you enjoyed our previous talk on Moses and his shortcomings as a person, his brokenness, and how God used his story to basically glorify himself. Today,
exciting. I think it's good to always bring in a female perspective. I honestly think there's more emphasis on male heroes than there are women heroines.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it's just the way of the world, I suppose. And there's not much celebrated about female heroines in the Bible. And there's actually a lot of big names in the Bible who are women who did great things, who God used to do great and wonderful things. And I think this season, or the segment rather, of our Brokenness Meets Grace podcast is a great way to just highlight these women and just break it down. And today we have the one and only Mary, right? We know the name Mary. People say this name all the time, but I think she is really one of a kind for many reasons. But the most important was that she was the mother of our Lord Jesus, and I mean, that alone should just give her, great levels on another level. So
she's a goat.
She really is. She really is. And of course, she was human, right? And yes, she was a great woman, but she was imperfect, just like us. And this segment is really just to highlight what could have been. We were not there, but we are using the Bible as reference. We're using historical accounts as reference, and we're just trying to, figure out what life for Mary could have been like, or what was it like from a human element, to just be able to relate to her a little bit more, because I think really relatability is everything in our walk, in our Christian faith, and it's always good to be able to be on some, you're just like me, or I experienced that as well. It just makes it easier for us to endure this very difficult journey that is life. So Mary is definitely one person that we want to break down from a relatable perspective. And we're going to do that shortly.
Absolutely. And it's important that we will be talking about other Marys in the segment, because there are other Marys who featured in the Bible as heroines, and had great stories as well.
Yeah.
But today we're talking about the Mary, right? The Mary before the other Marys. And I just think her story is so amazing. Of course, the big part of it is the fact that she was chosen to bring the physical manifestation of God, here on earth.
Yeah.
But just as a person, her journey, and just everything that she went through, we just thought it was such a great way to talk about the heroes of the Bible, and she has to feature as one of them.
Has to.
So without further ado, let's get into it. We're going to do what we do. When we talk about the heroes of the Bible, we basically first start off by breaking down their historical context, who they were, where they came from culturally, the kind of context they grew up in, the history at the time, what it meant for them, etc. And then we're going to go into breaking down what we think of them today. So the good qualities that we know of them. We know them to be great at this, great at that, having achieved this. And then we're going to talk about the parts of them that actually may have been broken, whether we know that from a biblical reference or from a human's point of view. Some of the thoughts that we've come up with, looking at their characters, looking at the kind of story that the Bible plays out about them, but what we think they could have struggled with as people. And then, of course, we will tie it all up with a neat little bow that speaks about the grace, and how God took those broken pieces and basically put them together for his glory.
Because if you really think about it, that's everybody's story.
Absolutely.
In that order. It's this not ordinary individual who doesn't think or believe that they're any good, that they have any worth or value. And God is like, I choose you, I want to use you. And it's just this full-on lifetime journey of mistakes and grace, imperfections and grace. And it's just grace meeting us throughout all of it that makes this journey so possible and worthwhile.
Exactly. And we like to say that people are like onions, like layers and layers and layers and layers. And when we look at the characters of the Bible and when we look at their stories, it's very easy for us as people to just look at them one dimensionally.
Just from the surface.
This is the surface. This is their story. This is who the Bible says they are. But they were people. And people are layered. And hopefully through this season of brokenness meets grace, we can actually just learn to unpack those layers a little bit and see, what could have been under there. What could have been a character flaw, or strength of theirs, and just delve in a little bit deeper there.
Definitely.
So let's get into it.
Yes.
Right? So Mary, mother of Jesus, contextually, what do we have?
So Mary is young, right? Very, very young, in a very patriarchal culture, tradition. Women need to be married at a young age of 15, 16 in this particular tradition. And their fathers are the ones who kind of expedite this, and they have, everything laid out for them, because literally that was a woman's goal in that time, to just be married and to be, a wife and a mother and a nurturer, nothing else. So it was a very big deal to be, given to a good, wealthy family, a family with a good name, a family with a good reputation. And this is just where Mary found herself, that she was now betrothed to Joseph, right? Very young couple, still trying to figure life out, very innocent, very inexperienced. And so they are courting each other, so to speak, and they're about to get married. And cue in the angel, cue in God, cue in Gabriel, right? And he comes and he just upturns Mary's life, and essentially Joseph's as well. But the message came to Mary first, and this is now where her life is upended. And she's told that she would be, the mother or the human vessel to house God, essentially, to be the vessel, the incubator of the Christ. And she was chosen because of her righteousness, right? And it was very specific, it was very intentional. But just think about this. Out of all the women in that particular time, out of every single individual that God could have chosen, he chose her, and he chose her because she was favored by God. That is what the angel said, that you have been favored by God. You have been chosen. You have been set apart. You have been called to be the human vessel or the human incubator for God. That is just like mind blowing. And you can imagine for her, like, what are you sure? What are you talking about? So she was appointed this assignment, and she agreed to it. And I think what's so beautiful about God that we really don't understand is it's a partnership, right? He doesn't impose his will on you. He doesn't force anything on anybody. He asks you, and he's waiting for you to say yes or no. It's an invitation. He's not forceful. And this really was an invitation to Mary, and she had to say yes for it to actually play out the way that it needed to. But of course, in God's sovereignty, he knew she would say yes. And that's also a deeper level of just the spiritual. But for me, it's just still that he even still invites us to make the decision to say yes to him. He's not imposing his will on. It's a partnership with him. And she did, of course. And I can just imagine the fear, the craziness. How is it that I would have a baby, not only just a baby, but God himself, as a baby inside of me, and I've never been with a man. I've never, consummated anything, any marriage. It would literally just be a miracle baby. And she had to believe this as well. Sure. She had to believe this to be true. And of course, fast forward, this was her reality. And of course, she couldn't just pretend this away. She couldn't just act like it didn't happen. She had to have a very real conversation with Joseph and tell him that I am pregnant, the son of God inside my belly, and you can imagine also the fear, not only in her sounding crazy, but the fact that he wouldn't believe her, because who would say that? It's the fear of rejection. But it's the most bogus thing anybody could say, that you would automatically believe it to be a lie.
And it's so bogus that the only way Joseph believed it was because the angel came to him.
Angel had to
he had to go to him because
he would have never believed
unbelievable,
it.
you know, especially in that culture.
Exactly.
Especially in that context. It's like you're taking chances here, really.
Exactly.
What do you think? I am stupid type thing.
And you need to also understand that a rejection of a betrothal was very like taboo.
Yeah.
You understand? So if somebody, you know, said, no, I don't want to marry this girl, or, you know, if they shamed the family in any way, you know, it was like a stain on that family's name for all time. So you can understand also her fear if she were to come out and tell people this, that I'm pregnant and we're not even married. We haven't even gotten married. You know, and of course, traditionally, then you couldn't be with somebody sexually if you were not married.
To them.
You know, so that stain on her family's reputation was also a big fear and hindrance for in sharing this. But she had to. There was a compelling, there was a pressing, and it was a very real experience to her, whether she believed it or not, whether other people believed it. This is what she heard and this is what she experienced. And she had to live up to that experience because she also said yes to it as well, you know?
And for me, I think that moment, more than anything else, what I'm thinking when I think about that context is the fact that this person is a child.
Yeah.
Like she's 16, 17 years old. It's a lot to think you're going to be somebody's mother at that age. It's another thing altogether to just be told that you're going to be
the mother of
God. Like, where does that even start? You know? And then you think about contextually the fact that, you know, it is a woman's honor to honor their family, you know, and now she's been put in the position to honor her family, but dishonor them at the same time. And I think in most instances, that's what happens when we do have to make a choice for purpose, you know. God doesn't put us in positions where choosing him will be comfortable, you know. He doesn't put us in positions where having to make the choice to follow or obey him because he knows what our purpose is going to be accepted, you know. And even with that, she still chose God. She chose to be ridiculed because let's think about the context and let's use society as a backdrop, right? If this person was in 2024, okay, let's not use 2024 because 2024 is far too liberal, and probably it would have been accepted at that time. But back then, this was like the most awful
taboo
thing to happen, especially to a young woman, you know. And I can just imagine that she had to deal with a lot of gossip. She had to deal with a lot of shaming. She must have had to be in hiding for long because the community wanted her head. You know, I mean, something like this was equivalent to being stoned. I think one of the rules was that if something like this happened, the woman must be killed. She must be stoned because she broke a commandment, you know, that was equivalent to adultery. You know, how did you fall pregnant without it being the person you were betrothed to? So just imagine like all of that contextually, all of the societal, you know, backlash, her family's backlash. I mean, angels didn't go visit her family. Well, at least the Bible doesn't tell us that. You know, only Joseph and her had an encounter with the messenger of heaven. So can you imagine even her family, you know, telling people a truth that is so true to you? You faced God one-on-one. You heard him speak to you. You heard him instruct you. And having to explain that to people who are not meant to understand it, but still go ahead with it. That's purpose, you know, and we can take that from her, that it was such a brave thing that she had to do, but it wasn't easy. It wasn't easy at all. You know?
And that's really what purpose looks like, because you really don't know what you're stepping into, but you just believe that you need to say yes. And you kind of catch up to it every step of the way, you know. And just to confirm what you're saying, that they weren't from Nazareth. Jesus was born in Nazareth because they went to Nazareth, right? They left their home because of that ridicule, because of that shame. And I'm pretty sure even from their family, you know, even from the people who were meant to protect them and be there for them and understand, they, I'm sure, experienced that rejection keenly from them the most, which forced them to step out and leave their comfort zone, to step into an unknown situation, you know, knowing very well that they were given an assignment that they have to fulfill. So it was, I'm sure, a very heavy laden yes. Like, imagine saying yes to something that big, right? But everything around you is not confirming that this is true. If anything, everything around you is telling you you're crazy and you shouldn't be doing it, right? So this is where they are right now. Of course, the turmoil and the conflict, and I'm pretty sure Joseph as well is trying to catch up to it himself, because it's a lot, and I think this is also another example of grace where God is concerned, because it could have just been a message given to Mary, but God fully understood that in our human casing, we cannot grasp things that are beyond reasoning and capacity. However much he wants to entrust us with it, we need a little help.
Support.
We need support, we need a nudge, we need a confirmation here and there, because we cannot, in our human feeble minds, grasp the things of the Spirit, grasp things of God, and it just speaks to how he's always, even in the partnership that he wants to do with us, he's always making it comprehensible for us. He wants us to understand. He wants us to engage. He wants us to be part of it. We're not just being puppeted here by God, but it's this thing where he wants us to fully understand why we're saying yes, why we're doing it, what it means, and what that experience looks like. And it really is just that journey with Mary and Joseph, right down from them, going to Nazareth, to Bethlehem, before Jesus was born in a stable, and just everything that culminated to that moment when Jesus was born, I'm sure was the biggest test for both of them. And getting to that stable was the accomplishment of that test, I think.
And I think, when you think about the grander scheme of things, along the way, yes, she said yes. And yes, she trusted God because, well, he's God. But even in her humanity, we cannot ignore the fact that it was a difficult situation.
Yeah.
And I imagine that all of this rejection, all of these labels, leaving her home, leaving everything she's known, it must have left her mind a little bit fractured, because it's all good and well for us to see, purpose and whatever as this grand, calling on our lives. We see it as this, we see the vision, we don't really see the journey, we see the end result, and it looks grand. I mean, even when we talk about the heroes of the Bible, it's from that perspective. But we need to also understand the fact that because they're human, a yes doesn't necessarily mean that I'm okay with it, physically, mentally, holistically, And for Mary at the time, I imagine that the greatest challenge that she had was, I'm not equipped to do what I'm about to do. Firstly, because I'm young and I'm not prepared.
Yeah.
But secondly, everything that I thought I knew about myself, I don't know anymore. Her identity was completely skewed now. It was shifted completely. And for her, what does she hold on to now? Other than the fact that she's bringing not even a normal child into the world, but who am I? And it meant that she had to rediscover who she was all over again, And then at the same time, sort of discover who this man is, who she's supposed to build a life with. And I can just imagine that level of complexity and confusion and heaviness is enough to break anybody, And even bring this child into the world when you already feel like, I'm so beneath him. What can I give him? What can I possibly give this baby? Who needs me to nurture him? But you never quite see yourself as enough. So there's self-esteem, there's low confidence in herself. There's fear of failure, because what a huge responsibility that's been given to me. I'm going to fail at it. I mean, how on earth
will I get
this right? And then there's also, now I have to be a wife, and I don't know what that is about, So there was a lot of identity issues that Mary might have struggled with, a lot of issues of confusion, overwhelming issues of self-esteem, and just finding her place in a society that had ridiculed her and humiliated her. I mean, there were people in her hometown that she must have been close with, friends that she lost, her family, and stepping out into Nazareth and starting afresh, with nothing and nobody except your little baby and your husband, who is your husband by default. It must have been the most unsettling thing for anyone,
Definitely. But I think also because God is God, that was also very intentional. As painful as it is, I think their story needed to look like that, needed to look like complete isolation, needed to look like complete, independence, so to speak, that everything that they knew, that they loved, had to be taken away from them, right down to their families, because they needed to fully depend on God. you know, because they were carrying his son. So there was a level of proximity that they had to have, that all those things would hinder if he didn't remove them, if he didn't take them away. You know, and sometimes that really is what it is. Isolation. I mean, we spoke about it with Moses as well, that he needed to be taken away from everything and everyone, not to punish him, not to, you know, make him feel alone, but to bring him closer to his source. Because it's in that proximity that you fully understand the assignment that you're on. You learn to appreciate it. You learn to, you know, be equipped for it a little bit better. You know, and you also know how to communicate with God that way. And I think they really needed to be in a different realm of communicating with God, because their assignment was just next level, you know. And looking from the outside, you would think it was painful. It was, you know, why would God allow that? But I think with us humans, there's no other way for us to get closer to God but isolation. We need to be in a wilderness experience to fully be surrendered to his will in our lives.
Very, very sad.
Yeah.
So fast forward, we know what happens after they leave their hometown, and they, you know, we know the story. Now Jesus is born, and he grows into a young man. You know, he grows into a man, and his ministry starts.
Yeah.
What does Mary go through here? Stay tuned for part 2, Mother of Deliverance, the story of Mary. And remember, it may be broken, but it's in the hands of the potter. Bye, guys.
Bye.
Catch you next week.